the usual questions about the author, his hometown, growing up, his impression of his students, what are their aspirations, desires for college, travel, but more importantly, what literature does he assign? So that's Judy's question, and let's
start with that.
start with that.
If you have an hour, I will tell you everything. Well, thank you very much for being here. It's just very nervous situation for me because a lot of people with a lot of interesting stories. So I was so excited to listen to your stories, and I have so small English words. I have, I think, 3 of them. So I will use 3 English words to tell you everything. I hope it's enough. I heard it's enough. On American television, it's enough, isn't it? No? I watched The View the whole morning to, to have some feeling of the language. So they were arguing about Trump, and I decided that it's the most thing that I have to do. Well, I'm a college professor, I would think. You say maybe teacher is the best way to describe me. And I'm not very comfortable to use a word writer for myself, but we can use it today. So I'm a writer and a literature teacher, like Olga, I think. And well, that's all I do, to teach and to write literature. So that's what I do. And I wrote only one book. It's Porcelain, that the story that Olga translated from that book. And I have to thank her for that job. It's amazing. I read that in English. Very good. It's better in English. Well, and so that's only one book. I wrote that for 7 years, I think. It took 7 years to finish that. So now I'm happy that I finished that book. I can show you the cover if you want to, because it's me and my grandmother waiting for the bus. It's from that story that you read. So cool. It's on the title.
That's cool.
That's my real grandmother, and the boy is someone, I don't know, the artist took some boy from nowhere and put it on the cover. So it's we on the bus stop. Yeah, and it's blue, like the China should be. So that's it.
Well, we do have questions, but you haven't answered yet. Okay. What was your hometown?
My hometown was Vladimir. It's the town from the story. Some asked about the town from the story. It's Vladimir. It's small town close to Moscow, 3 hours from Moscow. So it's my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Very old. It's older than Moscow. A lot of churches there. Yeah. And the river. Not unique for Russia, but that's how it was.
Okay. And would you like to tell us about your family a little bit? Oh, well, it looks like you had a great influence of grandmothers who were close with them.
We were close, very much, yes. Well, I was thinking about that question. We were very close with my grandmother, and I was wondering why. And I think that because of the fact that my mother had to work, and there was the tradition for women in Soviet Russia to work. There were no house wives, I think, in my circle. So she had to work, and my father had to work, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. So we were very close, yes. And she kind of, I wanted to write about her because it was very unique and precious relationships, I think. So that was my childhood, me and the grandmother, most of the time. And my parents are, I don't know, they worked at the vet institute, veterinarian, I think. So that's who they are. but now they are retiring as well, so they not work anymore. Garden and cats.
Yeah, in the Soviet time, in most families, both parents worked, and that's why grandmothers took care of the children. And I can tell about myself. I was also basically brought up by my grandmother. Maybe now I want Mike to tell the story about how I asked him to proofread, to edit my translation, and what mistake I made, and something that made him misread the story completely.
Well, Olga had asked me to take a look at her translation and make suggestions for any changes. And really, there were very few. There were mostly it was
articles
or some things like some capitalization questions like Pacific Ocean, both Pacific and Ocean being capitalized in Russian. It doesn't normally work that way. And so it was very interesting. She had done all the heavy lifting with all the verbs and things that I wasn't familiar with. But the story I thought when I first read it, it was ironic. I thought because when at the end of the story, when Yura and Grandma open the box, it's all Russian kind of food. It's buckwheat and whatnot. And Grandma says, America has sent us buckwheat. And Olga had left out the fact that it had come from the citizens of Vladimir. Oh. So that was a kind of a major omission of a word there. So it was almost like an O. Henry story there with the irony in it.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. And I guess I'll jump in and ask a question. What is it that you expected to be in the box if it was coming from America?
Well, everything from TV commercials. It was the time when we had a new thing on television, a TV commercial. In Soviet time, there was no TV commercials, I think, or maybe very dull. But at that time, there were new American TV commercials with bubble gums and chocolate and Coca-Cola and that Christmas spirit that we felt from that commercial. So I was expecting something like that, something very tasty and very American, I think. That was in my dreams. I remember I had a small brochure, maybe book, I should use that word, with candies. It was American candies, and it was, I don't know what kind of book it was, but I was looking through this constantly, and I dreamt about that candy, so I wanted something like that.
Did you ever find out why the American connection was made there? Why the people who had come to the door said it was coming from America?
I think that it was American money, and that association can use that money to buy stuff that they think is important. So not bubble gum, not credit. It's not important.
I have a question.
Okay, Jackie.
The story itself, what period of time are you putting it in? The reason
there are several questions of this kind, and before Yury answers it, I wanted you to speculate on it. I think you know Russia well enough to answer this question. So what time period is covered in the story?
Oh.
Any suggestions from the class?
1980s? 1980s?
Yeah.
About the late 60s.
I thought it was in the 70s because you refer to rotary telephones, and it might be the translation, but you talk about the bouffant hairdo, which in this country was around in that period of time. But and I didn't know they had retirement associations in Russia.
Yeah. And they still have it works like a club for interests, I think, in these days. At the beginning of the 90s, I think it's 1992 or something like that.
Yeah, I immediately placed it at that time. And Bernice has a question.
I found it strange that they came at night. It was very cold, obviously, and they gave her a ticket to go pick up the food.
Yeah.
And poor old lady, she had to go out in the evening in the freezing cold and deal with the snow and bus and getting lost to get this package, what they could have brought to her. I don't understand what they were thinking of when they planned this.
Yeah. I never saw it this way, but it's logical, yes. I don't know why. Maybe they wanted me to write a story. Maybe. I don't know. It's interesting, yeah. Maybe they had a lot of addresses and they were kind of busy. So that's why.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I wanted everybody to say what they liked about the story, and then we'll proceed with the questions about the story.
Well, I really like the story. Shall I speak?
Yes, of course.
I really like the story. It was very evocative, and even though, as Yury says, it takes place later than the time that I spent there, it still reminded me a lot of the place, and I could, you know, almost feel like I was back there, and especially the icy, the icy winter and the cold and everything. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, it made me feel like I was back there, even though, as you say, it did take place later than the time I spent there.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really enjoyed the relationship as depicted between you and your grandmother, and I could totally relate to the specialness of it because that's what I did. Basically, I raised both my granddaughters, and while their mother was working as a teacher. And so in many ways, I'm almost like a mother to them because we spent so much time together from the time they were born until they, you know, were old enough to drive, basically. So that's 16 years for both girls. And it is precious. It is absolutely a precious relationship. And you and your grandmother, I think, were very lucky to share so much love and time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
I had a Russian grandmother. She drove me crazy. My sister and I crazy. And she was elderly. I mean, I remember as being old. I don't have such fond memories because, like I'm telling you, she did drive us crazy. We had to tell her every second where we were. The minute we were young, very young at the time, and she would tell our parents, which they both worked also, anything that we did.
Oh.
And you couldn't hide a bad thing from her. But what I wanted to tell you about your story is that I like the descriptions of when they got to the city, and I liked her walking through the snow, just the description of, I felt how cold it was and how difficult it was to find this place. And I liked all your descriptions.
Thank you. Thank you. I like it too. I mean, I want it to be alive. I don't like the story, but I like it to be alive. It's important.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you were able to put somehow or another, when you bring a character to life, so I find that I can inhabit one character or the other. In this case, I found myself sort of able to inhabit both of them, both the grandmother, terrified of slipping on the ice, holding tight onto the grandchild's hand, and also the grandchild willing to skitter away. So it was, you know, for a minute there, it was like the snowsuit and the rubber boots were going back on, and I felt like the kid. And then in the next minute, I would be thinking about the grandmother. So I really liked that.
Well, no, that's great. That combination of two voices, I wanted it to be this way, so you can be a boy and a grandmother at the same time. I wanted it to be this way. That's great.
Yeah. Well, and Jackie, maybe you will say something.
I enjoyed it. I particularly liked the tempo of it. I felt as though I was keeping up with them, and I was part of the party. It was a wonderful experience for me. Thank you.
Oh.
I want to say I really like the descriptions as well, particularly after the description of Grandma talking about her in kind of an unknown verb of motion, and then discussing her life, being a single parent and working at off the Pribor and coming out of the sea of Azov, but then turning around, so constantly giving throughout her life, but then finally being the recipient of something. I also like the discussion of when you were in the telegraph office and the sort of talking about what the people that you saw, what was going to happen to them down the line there. I thought that was an interesting way to describe things.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Go ahead.
I agree with the voices. Hello, Yury. It's very nice to meet you. Enjoyed the story very much. It's very difficult to capture a child's voice and not sound like an adult embodied in that child, and yet talk to your audience, give your audience what they need, which may be more than what the child sees, but you did that beautifully. So I really enjoyed it, and smiled through the whole story. My face would light up, and then.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Pat wanted to say something. She was interrupted.
Well, this is related to the voices, but I also, like Mike, really enjoyed the telegraph scene, and I felt like we were hearing the voices of people in the community, and how fun that was to eavesdrop on them, and how they were all eavesdropping on each other, pretending that they weren't, and that was really a feeling of being in former times, and also reminded me of what we used to have was called party lines. I don't know if you remember, where different people would share a telephone, and so you would hear other people's conversations, and that was thinking how we communicate now with text messages and computers and phones, and really taking us back to a former time of community communications, and no secrets there.
Yeah. It was very important for me to do that scene, because I felt like it's a sort of Titanic that exists only in my memory. I mean, that telegraph thing. So I wanted it to be alive in the story. It was a journey and adventure in my childhood, to go there, to listen to people, to have a chance to talk to my, other grandmother, second grandmother. So yeah, thank you for your.
I wondered about your choice of the word Titanic there. Is that how you envisioned it then? Was something that no longer existed, some huge thing like that?
Yeah. And I felt like it was in my childhood, there was a documentary, I think, about Titanic, and they kind of, not enough English words, but they go down to the sea and filmed it in the sea. So I felt like telegraph, something like that for me. It's down there. It exists, but you can't see it anymore. It's only in memories. So that's why I used that metaphor.
I just wanted to say that I thought it was a very well constructed short story. The movement throughout the whole thing didn't allow your mind to stray at all. You wanted to find out what was going to happen right next. And as I told Olga, I thought an ideal title would be Anticipation, because that's the way I felt through the whole book, was wanting to find out what was going to happen or what was in the box. And I congratulate you. I really liked it very much.
Thank you.
Well, now then, Yury, you have to answer the question about the title, because I couldn't translate it. I didn't know how to translate it. And I don't know why you chose this preposition, na помощь. And I have several Russian speakers who will understand. Na помощь is the real title of the story.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? I don't know, honestly. Well, I know, but it's hard to explain. This na помощь, I think, is a kind of help in English. Help. It's help me something. But at the same time, it's the package, you can call it help. And you go in for the help, you go in for that box. So you go in after the help. I'm not sure if it's good description, but it's help in many meanings. The box, the journey, the feeling that they feel in the dark in the city, that they need help to get there. So it's all about help from the other country, from each other. So that's why it's about help.
In English, there's the word aid, and it comes up in many contexts. You go to college, you get financial aid. If you are poor and you have to go to court, you get legal aid. You have lots of aid societies. So that may be a help.
Oh, okay. That's it then.
Well, I think I like help though too, because it's a two-sided coin. One is the offer of help and the other is the request for help. Whereas aid more implies, I don't know, there's a little more distance in that. You don't yell out aid if you're about to fall on an icy sidewalk. I sort of get that, if that's how you would translate it.
So would you use for help in English? After help?
After help, I don't know.
Well, help me, please.
Going for help.
I'd say going for help.
Yeah,
Well, I'd say that like мы едем за помощь. So мы едем is understood and we're going for help or for help.
For help.
Yeah.
For help.
Going for help.
Okay. And then we have the whole list of questions. Well, how autobiographical is the story? That was Pat's question, and I can read the whole question. Or you communicate a very loving relationship between a grandmother and a grandson. It seems that it must be based on emotions you and experiences you have had. So I think we found out that it is autobiographical.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe not every single detail is true. I kind of imagined that situation, but the relationships was pretty much like it's in the story. And I wanted to say that I kind of felt my grandmother's house as a safe space, I think, because relationships between my parents was difficult. And so I felt very insecure in my parents' house. So I went to my grandmother to feel that safe situation. So that is why it was a huge deal for me. And I wanted, in that story, I wanted it to be that kind of place, that we wanted to come back to very warm thing, to very kind of nice place. So that's true. And it's set in Vladimir. I saw the questions about the place, the town and street, and it's about Vladimir. It was a very interesting question about streets, Ulica Mira, Prospect Mira in Moscow. Yeah, Mira is a very common, maybe not common, but it's in every town all around Russia and Soviet Russia. Ulica Mira was in every town, so it was kind of
that was my question. Yeah. I lived on Prospect Mira, and in Moscow. So I really was just trying to guess where your story took place, because I couldn't quite identify it. So I was just kind of searching for clues.
Yes, yes, yeah. Prospect Mira is huge in Moscow in these days. It's huge and very loud and very busy, I think. So yeah, in Vladimir it's smaller. The same title, but it's smaller.
I tried to Google yesterday where in St. Petersburg, in Leningrad, was this Mira Street. And when I just typed it, Улица Mira, I saw a lot of continuations, like in Gelendzhik, in Grozny, in many cities. It's like Main Street in America, or as Lenin Street in Russia. Yeah. It's in every city.
Every city.
Yeah. Well, an interesting question is also, what is the significance of being a Leningrad siege survivor?
Yeah.
Special benefits from the state, because, and the author of this question, I think it was Pat also, actually said that it's interesting, the difference that grandmother denies that she is a siege survivor, but her grandson uses this designation when he has to stop the bus, to hold the bus.
Yeah, yeah.
So why she denies it?
She denies it because she wasn't
Survivor.
that kind of person. So I used that in the story to make the bus driver stop, because it means more than usual person. It's kind of, society has more respect to that people. So I used that, I lied that to make the bus driver stop and wait for her. And it was the irony of situation that I felt like a child, that I could use that to make him stop, to wait. So I used that lie. And
White lie.
I think it was really special help from the state at that time and nowadays too. So yeah.
There was also a question, well, about the bus driver. And the question was to the classmates. Well, first one is for Yury. Do you think the bus would wait for these persons in present-day Russia? And then the second part of the question is to the classmates. Do you think the bus would wait in present-day America? So let's start with Yury.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question for me. And I don't know about these days. My mother used to run for buses, I think. And sometimes they wait, sometimes they don't. It's human nature. It's a good driver or bad driver sometimes, I think. Well, but in my childhood, it was very bad transport system in Vladimir. It was a struggle to get anywhere. So people were angry, bus drivers were angry, everyone was angry. My experience from that system was like that. So I don't know if they wait today. I remember that stories that people started to share when they travel around the world. And I remember a story from the person who went to Germany, I think, in beginning of 90s. And they described transport system in Germany with happiness, because they realized that there is a timetable for buses and buses are comfortable and wait for people. And that was a dream, heaven in Germany. So it was a contrast to what transport system was in Russia in these days. So it was a struggle. And it's very interesting. What do you think about American driver in these days? Will the bus wait for you if you run for the bus? You
Probably
don't
not.
It might depend on if the bus driver is late, if he has time, if he's a compassionate person. There's so many variables. It's hard to know. I myself have never ridden on a bus like that, transportation, just because of where I've lived.
I think
In New York City, bus drivers definitely don't wait for you.
I think it's an open question. I think it's an open question. I've seen the I've seen a bus stop and wait for somebody who was, you know, maybe a grandmother or maybe a mother with a couple of kids. And I've seen buses just go on ahead. I haven't ridden the bus in years, but I have ridden it enough to know the feeling somehow of safety when you do catch it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And what a triumph that is.
Yes, nice feeling, right? When you're inside. Yeah.
The buses didn't wait for you in Montreal. They didn't care how cold it was.
Well, I have to tell you that when we went to the Kennedy Center with our group, there was one person who was late, and everybody was saying, "Let's not wait, let's go, we will be late." So, yeah, even compassionate people sometimes are not compassionate. But there was another funny episode when we went from Heritage Harbor to the Kennedy Center. One man was not there at the time. So I found his phone number, I called him, and then he was ready in 1 minute. And everybody laughed because mainly ladies go to the theater, and they laughed because they said only a man could be ready in 1 minute. No, women can't. Okay, but
I have a question.
Sure.
Something that maybe I gathered from the story that maybe was or wasn't there. I'm not sure. I'd like to ask Yury. There seemed to be some distrust when the two people showed up to tell the grandmother that she was receiving this package. And there seemed to be some doubt in her mind, like, yeah. First of all, she didn't even think she was the recipient. She kept looking at the paper later on. Yeah. And also some kind of, I guess, distrust of being offered something that she didn't ask for. And I was wondering whether that was really Yury's intention to put that in there, or whether I just got that on my own.
It was my intention, because it wasn't a common thing to get help from someone, like someone is ring the bell and you open the door and you get help. It's kind of very weird situation. So we were kind of didn't believe in that. And plus there was a question about that fear of breaking in, I think that,
right.
Yeah, and it was the feeling at that time, because there were a lot of crimes, I think, and people were afraid of opening the door to the strangers. That's why we felt so weird when we watched American movies or TV series, and there was the door with the glass in it. We felt, oh my God, it's so scary. It's not safe. Yes, because it's the glass in the door. You should be safe. It was a tradition at that time. It's not in that story, I think, but in another story of the book. It was a tradition when people used to put second door in front of the first door. So it was a huge kind of, we wanted to be safe from crimes and all that stuff. And I remember that lonely old ladies pretended that they married if someone ring the bell, and they scream the name of the man, like she has a husband or maybe son. And it was very funny because they were lonely, they never get married, but when someone ring the bell, they suddenly happens to be married, and they scream their husband's name. I don't know how they choose that names. It was very interesting why, for example, it's Boris. I don't know who they imagine in their head. So yeah, it was very not safe feeling for people. So they opened the door with scare, and in that situation, it was hard to believe in help like that.
Yeah, it was typical of the 90s. And then when they walk, there are bars on the window. Again, that's, for me, that's the sign of the 90s.
Mm.
So that would say she had her doubts, but they went anyway. So she's an adventurous soul. She was about to do that. And what a great adventure for a kid too. So courage.
Maybe.
But Yuri, when they keep asking the grandmother about, are you a Leningrad siege survivor? And she says no a couple of times at the house, and then when she goes to get the box. And is that because they're already compensated somehow and they don't want her to get additional compensation? Or what? Why is that?
I think because it was a different help or a different package for that kind of people. So they wanted to be sure that they do everything right, that if she's a survivor, then she should have more or something different, I think.
So that was a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a siege survivor would be more privileged.
Right.
Well, there was a question from Judy. Okay, well, before, well, the question for Judy, was there a real association of retirees?
Yeah, there was a real association, yeah. And it still exists, I think.
Okay, Judy, would you like to comment on what you wrote? I always chuckle about the ads on the US
Well,
TV.
at Christmas time in the United States now, there's always an ad that says it's the Association of Christians and Jews. And they always come on and they ask for money for elderly people in Russia who are survivors of the Holocaust. That's the way the whole ad reads. And I've always chuckled about it. It's kind of like, well, there were a lot of Holocaust survivors in other countries. Why are we just focused on Russia and Holocaust survivors by this organization? And I've never really researched to see if it's a real organization. I assume it is, though, because they're always asking for donations around Christmas time here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I read that question and I didn't know that there was such commercial on American television. It's interesting, yeah. Never heard of that organization, but that doesn't mean anything. Maybe it exists. At Christmas time, we had a Coca-Cola commercial, I think. Maybe it was a help.
A question from Pat, why did they laugh so much at the end?
Yeah, because we wanted a bubble gum, I think. For my grandmother, it was funny that she got what she got from America. It's kind of funny. I remember that we had a lot of TV series from America at that time on television, and we loved that. We loved that. One of the first TV series that was ever on TV, on Russian TV, was, do you know that Santa Barbara? Do you know that soap opera? Maybe we walked and didn't watch that, but we loved it. It's a legend in Russia, Santa Barbara. It's 2000 episodes or something like that. And we love that. It's even an impression, I forgot the right word, but it's the combination of words for Russian people to say, oh, it's Santa Barbara. We use that when it's a difficult family situation and we want to describe that, and we call it, oh, it's Santa Barbara. It's funny, right? It's a very beautiful town. I saw the pictures online, but who could imagine that in Russia it means, oh, it's a family mess. It's Santa Barbara. So we watched a lot of that things, and I loved Dynasty. I loved Green Medicine Woman. It was my favorite, and it was association, and that feeling of America was that kind of thing. Rich people in beautiful earrings do their, everyday lives. So we wanted something glamorous, I think, and we got not glamorous things. So that's why we laughed.
Well, and also it wasn't from America, but it was from Vladimir Association of Retirees. That was another irony of the story.
Yeah.
By the way, if my mistake was not a mistake, and if America really sent buckwheat and macaroni and cheese and something like that, something very, very casual, mundane, would it change the meaning of the story? What do you think?
I know it's the irony, that thing is the irony of what you expect from the help and what you get from the help, what you expect from life and what you get. And so I know if it matters who sent that. Was it just American money that people bought something on that money, or that American food or something like that. It was just the irony of the dreaming while we were in the bus, we were dreaming about that thing, and then we get the reality. But the reality is quite comfortable and nice after the snow and ice. So
at the end of the story, I actually had to look up on the Wikipedia about buckwheat, because it's a word I knew. I don't think I've ever eaten it. I mean, I knew it was a cereal, but what I found out was that Russia is the largest production of buckwheat in the world. And so that, of course, then highlighted the fact that it was really ironic that they would be sending something that Russia has lots of.
Yeah, I had it last morning. Yeah. So
when we make blini, we always use buckwheat flour.
Oh, yeah. It's nice.
And that's from the Russian part of my family. That's just, you would never have it on a pancake like you get a pancake in America. It's always made with buckwheat flour.
Okay.
And there's a grain that we make something out of, and it's called kasha. And and you buy it in a box. And I use it all the time. I absolutely love it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I fry up onions and tons of onions, and cook up the buckwheat and mix it with noodles and onion. And that must have come from Russia, because that's my family, and that's what we always ate. And it comes in a box. You buy it in any supermarket. It's called kasha.
Kasha. It's Russian word kasha.
Yeah.
Food for the morning that every children hate. Yeah.
If you go where we live, if you go across the Bay Bridge to the eastern shore of Maryland, about 15 minutes on is Y Mills, which is very famous old mills, and you can still get their buckwheat, which is stone ground.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch it being ground and then bag it up and take it home. And I do that.
I didn't know that.
You can have buckwheat noodles. I think it's called soba. I got onto those a while back. They're wonderful. I don't know if they're, I thought they were Japanese, but clearly the buckwheat itself may come from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, but anyway, we still have a couple of more questions. And one question was about the title of the book and how the title of the book is related to this story.
Yeah, and
the title of the whole book is Porcelain, and what is kind of porcelainy in this particular story?
Yeah, I heard that some singer called his memoir this word. I hated that singer. I can't remember what singer it was, but he used that word for his memoir. And the description that in that question is very good. I like it because grandma is physically fragile but exhibits strength. That's what I meant. Yeah. I wanted that title for the book because it's the feeling of fragile thing.
Fragility.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Fragility. Plus, in every Soviet house, there was porcelain cups, china cups. It's still here in my home from my grandmother. So it's the symbol of something which is fragile, but that exists in every family. So that's a metaphor. I think I wanted to use that for the book. But the description that you write in the question is very good. Yeah.
That's Barbara.
Yeah, that's immediately what I thought of. And it really makes me want to read the other stories that are in the book. So I was going to ask you, how can we do that? Because I don't read Russian, unfortunately.
If Olga has a free summer and autumn and winter, and maybe a couple years.
A couple of years.
It took you 7 years to write. So maybe. Yeah, Jackie, yes.
May I ask a quick question? Because you said we're getting to the end. At the end of the story, they hum a song, and it says something about no holding grudges anymore.
Yeah, the song.
What does that imply in your thinking?
Really, I forgot the song. At the end of that story, there is a song, right?
Yeah.
It
And
says
it's not,
in the book. Maybe I forgot
I
it.
think that's what the song was named, but it was hard for me.
Okay.
I cannot remember in Russian.
I will find that. I don't remember. There were a lot of old Soviet songs that I used in that book because my grandmother used to sing them a lot. She had that a book with songs, just text, lyrics. So we read that and we sang that a lot, and it was a huge tradition for them, for my grandmother and her friends to sing that. But I can't remember which song is that. What song is that in the end? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I will find out it later, and maybe I will, through Olga, give you an answer to that question.
Yeah, I cannot find it.
I can't either anymore.
You can't find something. Yeah, that's a very good thing. Okay, I will read it again. I try not to read my stories, but in that case, I will find the
Okay,
song.
why don't you read your stories?
Yeah, I don't like them enough to read them. So I try to pretend that they live their own life. It's like a child that has his own life, and you not really accept that way of living, but you let the child live. So that's my feeling from the book. I don't want to meet that in my life.
Okay, well, any other questions? Something I missed?
We can discuss Dynasty.
I don't.
If you want. I loved it.
Crushed it.
I'm gonna see if I can stream Santa Barbara, which I vaguely remember, but not well enough. I'm gonna see if I can watch that.
Yeah, maybe on YouTube you can find some Russian translation. Because for Russia it's a legend.
Yuri, is this what you were thinking of?
Thinking of, sorry.
The porcelain cup?
Porcelain cup.
Yeah, porcelain cup.
This came from Moscow.
Oh, yeah, that's very beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We have a lot of this. I can show you some of mine if
Wait,
you
I
want.
showed you the wrong side.
Oh, okay, that's very nice, and I have a lot of it. Maybe you can see it's on the shelf. Can you see that?
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can, that thing, we had it in every Russian house, Soviet house in these days. So we had a lot of this, and that is Leo Tolstoy, if you know that guy. Yeah.
Who doesn't? Well, maybe there is one question which we have not answered. What about your students?
My students.
It's what literature do you teach? What kind of
Russian mostly, classics, I don't know. 19th century literature, that's my thing. Sometimes they like it. Sometimes they like it, yeah.
Is it just an ordinary school or kind of privileged?
Well, I think
elite?
It's privileged. I think it's privileged. They have me. It's a school where they can choose the profession while they're teaching, learning. I don't know, I'm teaching, they're learning, right?
Right.
So they can choose the profession, and my students are designers. some of them told that you are some of you told that you are a decorator. So they can be decorators, they can be web designers and something like that. So that's my students usually, someone who want to be designers.
So they would take your class as an elective rather than something that's required?
No, they can choose my...
They can choose it, so it's an elective.
No, they can't. They can't.
Oh,
they have to learn literature. That is not very comfortable situation for me sometimes, because if the person doesn't like literature or love Dan Brown only, it's quite difficult for me with these guys like Turgenev that you like, or Tolstoy.
I'm glad they take it though. I'm really glad they have to be exposed to it, even if they don't like it. It's important.
Yeah, I hope it is. I hope it is. For some of them are very, nice people. Some of them like Dan Brown.
And who are your favorite writers, Yury? Who are you reading?
Oh, there was that question in the list, and the last book I read is Virginia Woolf. I think you know her better than me, but I really loved her since my student years. Mrs. Dalloway, or To the Lighthouse. I love the novel very much. She's my favorite, I think. But Chekhov, I like Chekhov very much. He is my favorite Russian writer, I think. A lot of them. There are a lot of writers, don't you think?
Whose influence do you think is the biggest on you as a writer?
Yeah. I loved the stream of consciousness literature when I was young, and so I loved stream of consciousness literature and Virginia Woolf and Proust, Faulkner, some from America. So I loved Faulkner very much. I forgot the title of that novel, my favorite from him. Oh, I love Michael Cunningham. Do you know him? It's American writer, Michael Cunningham. He wrote the novel The Hours, I think. There was a movie about Virginia Woolf, actually. So it's very good writer, I think. Michael Cunningham, The Hours. I loved him too. Well, yeah. I want to ask what is your favorite writer, but I don't know if we have a time for that.
Oh, we sure have.
But I saw you liked Virginia Woolf, so it's nice.
My favorite Russian writer was Dostoevsky, which I read in junior high school, I think. I was sort of a reader, so I read a lot of things that were never assigned in school, and I really loved him.
I love him too, but he makes you nervous, right? When you read Dostoevsky, you're kind of nervous person. You became a nervous person. Yeah, I love him. I love Idiot, my favorite novel of him. But I went to his museum in Leningrad a couple weeks ago. Yeah, small apartment, and only a cup. All the left is the cup, maybe from his life, in that museum. But when I read yeah, sorry.
No, so go on. Continue.
I just wanted to say that when I read Dostoevsky, I feel myself a little bit in the zoo, because there are a lot of very strange animals in his books, and you see them like a very strange thing, like you never saw before. It's for me like a zoo experience. I never met that kind of people, but they exist in his novels. So I love to read them.
I've been trying to find a wonderful story to read again, and I've decided not to read Moby Dick again for the 4th time. So what I'm going to do instead is read Life and Fate again, because it is a huge novel and a nice, enormous story. It's a wonderful reading.
What?
Life and Fate.
Oh, Life and Fate. Okay.
It's not, I mean, all happy roses and stuff, but it's a wonderful novel. So that's my next wonderful story to read.
Good. I'll try too. I didn't read it, so I'll try.
Olga introduced us to it, and it's worth rereading. So I'm going to do that.
There are two writers contemporary writers that I really like, and one is Louise Erdrich. She has won numerous awards, and she has an American Indian heritage, and she writes stories about that, and she's really wonderful. I was at the Library of Congress convention that they used to have before COVID. She won an award then as being one of the most outstanding American writers. And she just won the Pulitzer Prize for a book she just wrote. And she's wonderful. And the other one I love is an Indian writer, Indian. His name is Naipal. And I just love him. He just writes wonderful stories.
Okay. Good advices.
One of the contemporary American writers I like is Annie Proulx. I don't know if you've ever read anything. Her original novel was Shipping News.
Oh, yes, I love Shipping News.
Shipping News, yes.
Okay. Well, any questions from either side? American or Russian?
I want to thank you for that experience. It's unique for me because it's kind of, I always want to know what's in reader's head, right? And that questions gave me that chance to see how you feel about the story, and your words are very important. And
thank you for the experience of coming here. I really enjoyed meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think what we also all discovered, that literature has no borders. It's like Doctors Without Borders. Literature, good literature at least, is understood. Well, because my daughter, for example, said, no, Americans are not going to understand the story. Of course, there are many concepts which may skip a foreign reader, but still, the major themes are clear to everyone. And that's love and relationships.
And telegraph.
And telegraph. And telegraph. And even these party phones. And thank you, Mike, for this term. I didn't know that, of course. Okay.
So are you working on another book?
Good question.
I'm walking with all fingers I have, but it's quite difficult. But I'm trying, yeah.
Can you tell us the secret? We won't tell anybody. It will stay with us.
I wish I knew the secret.
What it is going to be about.
I can tell you, it's about the journey to London. It's about the journey to London. So that's the plot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And is it the first-person narrator again?
First-person narrator. I have different lines.
Okay.
You're going to keep us in suspense, that's all.
It's so impressive how you learned English there, and how so many foreigners speak English where we speak so few languages that we can communicate with other people. And I think you speak very, very well.
Well, thank you. And thank you very much. It's from songs. My English teacher didn't like me when I sang songs on the lesson. I realized why, because I sang like I hate to sleep alone songs, and she didn't feel well about that songs in class. And I can understand her from my position, but it's from songs, I think, and from Dynasty. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yura.
Thank you very much.
Was delightful.
Yeah, that's precious. Thank you.